Well, hello there, YouTube. This is a response video to a poll I put out. We're going to do a series on how I pick my fishing spots. For this video, we will cover the Park Lake series for different lakes all across the country. There's these park lakes, and we'll talk about a few here in San Bernardino County where I live. And some of these are pay lakes where you got to pay to fish. Some of them are just parks where they have a pond and they get stocked. So this would apply to mostly trout fishing, but there are some applications here for bass and other types of fish. We'll cover a little bit. So strap in, get yourself a coffee, a drink, whatever you're doing. You're sitting on the toilet, hopefully not for too long because these videos tend to run a little long, but they'll definitely be educational for the new fishermen and even a few tips for you old salty fishermen out there. So let's get started. Glen, Helen Regional Park. So how do I choose? A lot of people have been asking that, and I just wanted to put a poll out. But they always ask, like, why do I fish certain spots, or how do I come to pick a certain spot on a lake? And we'll talk about that right here. We're gonna do a series of them, so stay tuned at the end of this video for what's coming on that. But here at Glen Helen, typical park lake, just not very deep and pretty dirty, murky water. I mean, you could see from just this satellite shot that it is murky. So water clarity isn't going to play too much of a factor. However, like for example, at this lake, the wind tends to blow from this side of the lake this way when the Santa Anas blow. So on days like that, I would pick a cove or a sheltered cove where the debris from that flow of the water isn't stacking up. So I wouldn't want to fish down here where all the stuff is going to blow into the corner here. I would pick up here or over here or in here. But that's not typical everywhere. So why would I pick certain spots? Well, let's talk about what fish we're dealing with here. These are planted, stocked trout that are used to really shallow waters in pens, and they didn't have a whole lot of room to swim around. They certainly did not have a whole lake to use. So typically you want to start, it sounds obvious, but a lot of people don't know that, is start where they stock the fish. You got to try to find out, where do they plant the fish? Well, at Glen Helen, just so happens they park here and they pull up right here and stock it. So ideally this area would be number one, but it's not like at every one of these lakes they just sit there and they don't swim out through the lake. They do. They at every one of these lakes they will. However, there's always a small portion of the trout that they plant will just hang out right there where they were planted. They don't move because the water's murky, and they tend to just kind of hang out. And so this would be a great spot, at this lake. Another area would be nearby where they plant. Now, if you don't know where they plant, you just show up at a lake and I don't know where they planted this lake. I have no idea. Well, take a look around and see what roads they might have used or pathways they could have used. Sometimes they walk the fish over with just a net and dump them in. And if that's the case, then don't worry about it. So if you're wondering, okay, so I don't know where they plant, what then? Well, I like to fish points, these peninsulas at these lakes, because it gives you the opportunity, if I zoom in just a little bit here, it gives you the opportunity to fish multiple areas at once. If I pick like a spot just like over here, then this is all I've got, is just what's in front of me. I don't have different areas in these coves. These trout love to come into the cove, so they'll swim in here and then just kind of end up in here, and they don't leave. Sometimes they just don't realize they can leave and move into a different area of the lake for a while. Typically, planted trout just aren't very mobile. They tend to kind of swim into a little area and just stay there. That's why a lot of park lakes, the bite can be super hot in one little area and dead all around the rest of the lake. So in those cases, that's why I like to fish these points, because it gives you the opportunity to cast this way, cast that way, or just right here in the middle. And that's why, which brings up one of my other points. With these points, you really want to look for pinch points in these lakes, places where fish need to swim like to and from different areas, these tend to be hot spots for trout and park lakes because of that very reason. There's very small area for them to come through, and if you're here, I mean, you're definitely going to get fish that are going to be schooling through. Another one is natural or unnatural inlets. Some of these lakes have little pumped in creeks or natural creeks. There could be a million different versions of this. They could be little fountain. It could be anything that moves the water. Here at Glen Helen, they pump the water through a little creek here from the other lake, and it'll flow into here. And this little area right here could be extremely good at times when the trout, get that oxygenated, clearer water. They just hang out there and get high off of it. I mean, it's a drug to trout. Oxygenated, clear water is exactly what they want. They're used to that at the hatchery, highly oxygenated water. So when they get to these choked out, dirty park lakes, they just need it. They're in search of it as much as they are in search of food. They're in search of clear, oxygenated water. So keep your eye out for that in park lakes. For example, at this lake, the basically that same thing would be right through here. There's like a little bridge right here, and the water can come through here. Fish can stack up in these little coves. There's not much way for them to get in there. That's why this point right here can fish very well, covering this whole area right here. But that's a great example. So peninsulas, coves, mainly the peninsulas, though. The coves are great, but they can get you trapped into an area, especially when they're kind of a busy park lake. Like this one tends to get very busy. So if you're going to pick a spot and you're in a hurry in the morning and you just want to get a spot before everybody shows up, get a peninsula spot. Go into one of these peninsulas and fish one of those. So let's move on. Let's go to like a more of like a OC park lake, like a typical park lake that doesn't necessarily cost money to fish. I mean, some of these have like small fees just to get into the park or to park there at all. So here's an example of something like that. So if I were to roll up here to Yorba, as they call it down there, Yorba Regional, where would I fish this lake? Well, as you can see, what do you have here? You got the peninsulas, you got the different coves, but you also have the parking lot where you might see where they might have planted it. So I would immediately park and probably fish this area here. This area right over here looks pretty good, mainly because you got tree cover on both sides, and trout tend to love staying out of the sun. And because of these lakes are not very deep, they'll gravitate toward any kind of cover, even if it's not part of the lake. And as you can see, there's little docks and things like that. But I really like this open area right here because you would be able to cast under these trees and into this cove right here. Obviously, you could fish. Basically, you could walk this whole shoreline and cast, which is something I recommend doing. But if you're gonna pick a spot, I would pick something where you have a good ability to cast from shore in multiple directions, or have your bait in a different area pretty easy. We'll talk a little bit about trout tactics like baits and lures and stuff in another video. It's just not enough time in this video to cover what baits and lures to use, and we'll get to that. But for example, at this lake, you got to look around, and what do you see? You see a lot of paths and stuff, a lot of choices. So right here, I mean, you see this peninsula, why not? Why wouldn't you want to fish here? I mean, look at this option. So stuff like that. This is the main lake there that they plant, and as you can see, just kind of a almost semi-round, a little bit oblong, obviously, but not too much structure as far as coves and such. So really, I would just pick a nice point like right here, and basically the goal is to fish where I can get into the most areas. So I would always just pick the biggest of the peninsulas, these points right here. This one here, here's a choke point that I was talking about earlier. This would be a great place to target. You got water moving back and forth through here. And basically, you really just want to walk around and check it out. I mean, look at the difference in water between this lake and this lake here. I mean, you can see the brown stain over here, not so much here. I mean, look for that in the water as you're walking around. Take a look at the water quality as you're walking. It's amazing how, maybe a couple 100 feet, you'll see the water clarity is just so much better. And trust me, the trout will notice that also. And so that's a great thing to do, is just, even if you don't have structure, you may just have water quality issues. So check for that. You want to basically look for the best, clearest water. So here we have another area of a lake here, a typical park lake. So like on something like this, again, not much structure, but look at, you got a nice point here, and parking lot here. Now, sometimes there's not much difference in shorelines, but what that could mean is that you really need to move often, because that means that the fish could be really anywhere in something like this. And you really just want to move around if you can. If you're not very mobile, or you're not good at, can't walk very far, you got a bum leg or something's going on, just park here and fish along these easier spots, and don't worry about it. Just give it your best shot. But here, see, so here's another natural feature that they have, a little creek here. This looks like it's probably an outlet to the lake. Overflow. So right here, guys, would be so good right here. This is where especially if this is flowing really strong, looks like it was right here, this is just a fantastic spot. And judging by how worn out that is, it looks like people fish it quite often. Just a great example of something like that. And you can't go wrong with any kind of creek inlet outlets at these lakes. It's moving water, it's highly oxygenated, and it's a great spot. So to recap real quick before we move on to the next suggestions. So you have inlets, outlets, moving water, fountains, peninsulas, and possibly stocking locations. So definitely look into those spots. So let's move on to, let's try this. There's a good popular one here in Placentia, California, Tri-City, known for getting trout plants seasonally. So another park lake. This is another very typical spot. Public, they don't charge. You just pull up and fish. So as you can see, they have um, an easy place for the trout truck to pull up. You see right here, and what do you see? The road goes all the way up to the lake. So this area immediately, I would look into that. And as you can see, there's not much structure, but there are a few peninsulas. There are some pinch points where the water can flow back and forth. So another great area. And then you have a few coves in here. Now on this cove right here, I would want to pick these points, because right in here looks just kind of dirty and too shallow, and you don't want to do that. So you want to stick to the bigger points. This area looks really good. Another possibility of a place for the trout truck to stock the lake. But it looks really easy to just walk along in here. I'm really liking right here off of this point, because you do have flow back and forth. I'm not sure on this one which way flows to which, but these definitely have an exchange of water right there, and that'd be a great spot. So you do have trees, so in the spring when it starts to warm up, but they're still stocking trout, definitely look into that. You got shade that would shade out into the trees, then cast into there. Not a bad spot. So let's just try one last one. What's another one out here? Let's do El Dorado oops Park. I think this one here, is it El Dorado? Yeah. So here you go. You got El Dorado Park. This is a very popular place for trout plants and fishing. Let's go to this main lake here. They tend to stock this one pretty often. I've actually been to this lake quite a few times over the years, and it's a fun place to fish. Now, this gives a different opportunity. This is another one that I love because it gives you perspective, some different elements to what I'm talking about. So, among other things, fountains, rivers, points, peninsulas, stocking points. Here's another one. You got reeds, very common found on these park lakes, these reed patches. Now, it's a double-edged sword. If you're fishing for trout, it's not that you don't want to fish near these, but you have to understand these reeds contain large amounts of bass population. So, yeah, if you're a bass fisherman, then this is where you'd want to be, is at the edge of the reeds and the open water. Why? Because trout love to hang out around in these things too. So it's just a great place for bass to attack them. I've seen a lot of fish caught along this shoreline near this. So trout will come along and they're looking for any structure at all, and they find it, and they'll hang out in front of these things and even use them for cover. Not too many opportunities in the middle of all that, but it is a good place for fish to be. So you want to avoid stuff like this. If you see paddle boats and stuff being stored, or that's where they're launching them, just avoid that. There's no way trout are going to hang around all that activity in the water. So fish away from that. A spot, and I'm going to show you over here that I've had a lot of success at this lake, is right in here off of this point because of this here. Now, again, with the water exchanging, flowing back and forth, you can see the little creek that runs out. So very good spot, especially if it had rained and the water's flowing. You want to be right here where the water gets sucked through. You can even see a little channel right there in that shot. Let's zoom in just a little bit. But right here, you can even see a little channel forming right there. So really good area is this little like trifecta. You got 1, 2, and then 3 here. So right under this tree, and if there's some reeds there, very good spot to fish. I like these short coves like this because trout will come in and just kind of hang around in here because you got structure on both sides. They can feel trapped there, and secure, so they'll stay there, and it's a good option. So if you see reed lines, don't be afraid to fish them, but just understand that trout might be getting chased out of there from bass. And El Dorado, this particular lake, does have a bass population. So you definitely don't count on a whole lot of trout staying there. So some lakes have these natural aerators, or like actual gravity fed fountains and such, or some just have these pumped versions where they just have these things at the bottom of the lake and just shoots water in the air. So if you see stuff like that, definitely cast toward those. Those are any highly aerated area of a lake is a good choice, a very good choice. So I like this lake a lot because it has a lot of different natural features of a lake. They did a good job with it. But that's where I would fish. I've seen in the past where the trout trucks can stock lakes pretty easily by pulling up, and those lakes tend to get more fish than some of the other ones. Let me get a sip of this coffee. But what happens is some lakes like this one, they can't drive all the way up at times, and maybe it's just too muddy or whatever, and they just got to net them in there. So that is it, guys. Those are my main points of where to fish park lake systems. There are a couple other. Let's talk before I end the video. Let's talk about another variation of uh, these choices, because there are spots like this. This is a lake in Chino, California, called Prado Lake. This place can be extremely difficult at times, and right away you could see why it's a difficult lake. And I get a lot of complaints about people asking, like, why can I not catch fish here? Like, where do I go? Well, this is what's going on here. So you see, there's a lot of choices for the fish. There's almost 3 separate lakes here, and it makes it tough because if they stock right here, they have a little boat ramp right here, and this is where they dump the fish, is right here. And those fish will run, in any one direction. I mean, you can see there's a million coves here. So really, this is a tough one. And really what it comes down to is you're going to have to be prepared to move spots. I mean, there's going to be go-tos. So obviously peninsulas, just like I was saying before, if you don't know, go straight to a peninsula. If you don't know, if you have no idea where to go, you really don't see anything that stands out, fish a peninsula. Why? Because there's a good chance that the fish are going to come by at least these peninsula areas, and that's it. I mean, if you know the trout stock location, then hey, right here would be a good spot. Right over here would be a good spot. And in this little go between these two ponds, a lot of water exchange going on through here, especially if the wind picks up, and fish will love to hang out right there. So that's a good option. Another one is if they can stock from here, they could just be in here all day. You got a natural, well, not natural, but a built outlet to the lake here, the spillway, water flowing. If it had rained and it's flowing really good, that's a good idea to maybe go check that out. So some of these lakes can be kind of complicated, and they're not all just these round swimming pool lakes. And that's really the advice, is don't be overwhelmed by what you see when you pull up. It's really simple. Number one, pick a good spot where you can cast into multiple areas. So a peninsula, a rounded out cove. So like right here into the cove, where you can get into multiple areas, or the peninsula here where you can get into, two different coves very easily. So that's it. I mean, just make sure you guys are checking out the land. Look for those inlets, outlets, pumps, water moving, and don't be afraid to move spots. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I know that for the new fishermen, these park lakes can just detriment people, man. They just like get so depressed because they go here and they just don't know what to do. This is only to help you pick the spot. This will help you pick your locations a little better, and focus on that. Start small. There are some more complicated things you can do at some of these lakes, and we'll get to those later. But for right now, this is just a basic video to help you understand where to go, what spots to pick from shore, and it should help you guys. It'll help you fish, a little better and be in a better spot. So stay tuned. We still have two more coming. We have the State Park Lake edition, where we're going to cover things like, bigger spots like Silverwood Lake, Lake Skinner, some of these lakes out of state, even like Quail Creek Reservoir in Utah. I mean, there's all kinds of these big state lakes, and we'll talk about those. We're going to talk about natural lakes, like mountain lakes and stuff, like up in the Sierra or in the Rockies, like where I pick spots there. So lots of good videos coming like that. I've been getting a lot of requests for these again. So here you guys go, and hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, you feel like I didn't cover some, or there's a particular lake that you want me to talk about, let me know. We are also going to do breakdowns of certain lakes, like where to fish certain lakes. And this could cover all the way into Arizona. I've fished pretty much everywhere. And so don't be afraid to post up if you're in another state, or you're traveling to another area and you're looking into that. Let me know. So hit that comment section, hit the like, subscribe, and don't forget, over on Patreon, we do weekly fishing reports. We just posted a video on Hemet Lake, and there's going to be more to come. So hopefully you guys are going to be having a great weekend, a week, whatever day it is you're watching this video now. The key is get out and go fishing, guys. Take your family and go fishing. Take the kids out. It's a lifelong thing. It'll take them to some great places, and be a great distraction. So I'm out. Thanks for watching, guys. See you on the next one.